Hello and welcome to part 11 of the Celebration of Colour Stitch Along and video series. I'm Ros Clark, this is Ros Clark Craft here on YouTube, and you can also find me as Ros Clark Craft on Instagram and on Etsy. So part 11, this is, blue purple. We are almost all the way around. It's so exciting. If you've got this far as you've been stitching along, I hope you're still really excited about it. I love it when it's just almost coming together. And at this point, so this is mine stitched up to this point. You know, you can begin to see, I say begin to see, I'm sure you've already begun to see exactly where some of this is going to finish off with purple. I hope there will be one or two surprises still to come, but you're at the stage where you can begin to look around, for example, your colour wheel here and see, are there colours that actually, if you were to go back, you might do that slightly differently. I think my blue is too pale. This, you may remember, wasn't the yellow that I'd originally chosen because I ran out of it on the frame, and I also think that yellow isn't ideal in the way that it works. You can start to see how we're filling in, nearly completing all of those blended sections. Our ladder here with our complementary colours is almost finished. Several of these areas are finished, of course. I love this one with the triangles. And obviously you can work out in many of these blocks exactly where the purple is going to go. We're going to finish our robot Olympic rings, as somebody's described that section. We're going to finish our prison bars and our little bits of sweet corn lined up in a row. But it won't be completely done until we've added all of that in. Obviously, we've this week in blue purple, we are finishing off the frame section finally. Oh, I just noticed. Oh no, that's right. I thought I'd made a mistake. I don't think I have. Yeah, so blue purple was the final colour to go in the frame. So now's a good chance just to check all of that and make sure you have got all of the red and the red purple and the yellow in that frame as well. We have got, this is my little teaser hint for next week, we have got a little bit of black, and I wonder if you can work out where that might be going. So that's our stitch along. In my final video that I'm going to do that will come out next week, I'm going to show you a couple of finishes. So I will have finished my stitching on this one. I've also got my original model that I stitch, and I'm going to show you two different ways that it would be fun, I think, to finish these pieces. So somebody asked in the comments, well, I had two questions that were slightly similar. One that was specifically for these videos and one more generally about how do you choose colours for a project. So we've talked a bit about substituting colours, thinking about the impact of background fabric, looking at where the colour comes in a piece, what is it going to be next to? Do you need to focus more on matching the tone of a piece, how saturated it is, how grey, how brownish it is, or is it more important that it's within the same colour family, that it still needs to be, I don't know, pink, even if it's a slightly different kind of pink. But we haven't really talked about how you would go about kitting up from scratch. So the project that I'm doing at the moment is online. Well, it's on my files now, so I'm going to show you. It is from Tiny Modernist. Let me just check because I don't want to show you the chart. There we go. Tiny Modernist Spring Wreath. Okay, so that's the chart that I'm going to show you how I went about kitting this up. You can see from the front it's charted in Cosmo Floss. I have a handful of Cosmo Floss, but I certainly don't have all of them, and they're not that easy to access in the UK. Eternal Maker is the shop that I found that has the best range of Cosmo, but for something like this, it's just a small, I'm not worried about charting it with precisely the colours that are listed. I'm not going to go out and get Cosmo Floss. Now I have this. This is not complete, but not far off Classic Colourworks collection. I've been in the Thread Club for a couple of years from Lakeside Needlecraft, and I'm just looking. I've got up to somewhere in S. I think you get them in alphabetical order. I'm pretty sure I've got up to S. It's hard to tell because I have got 1 or 2 colours that I've bought separately. I've got 4 skeins of Wavy Navy. That hasn't come in the club yet, and then I'll get another one. So yeah, it's not all of the colours, but it's a pretty wide selection of their colours. And I'm like, right, there must be colours in here that I can use to kit this project up. So let me show you. This is the fabric that I wanted to stitch it on. This is an offcut. You can see it's the fabric I used for some of my variegated floss samples. So it's an offcut. I think it's lamb's wool. I think it's Vigar. I think it's 32 count. And it was just a square that was the right sort of size for this. I'm hoping I can just cut this section off. But if I need to, obviously I can unpick those samples that I stitched there. So that's the fabric I'm using. It is a neutral. It is, I would say, slightly on the greenish end of neutral. It is a cooler colour. We haven't really talked about cool and warm colours, and it's not always my favourite way of identifying them, but it is a brown that tends towards a sort of icy green, greyish colour. So what that means is colours that are warmer colours, pinks and reds and browns, warm browns, are really going to stand out from it, but the overall effect will be most dramatic if I also use coolish tones. So I'm going to bear that in mind as I am selecting my floss. Now, what I want you to do, I didn't wear that suddenly upside down, there we go. Okay, I'm hoping you can see. I might put this picture on the screen actually, because it's not showing brilliantly just from my iPad. So just before we get to look at the list of recommended flosses, have a look at the picture and see what are the main colours in there and how many do you think there are of each colour. So for example, I'm looking and I can see, okay, there are some pinks in there. There's a sort of darker pink and a lighter pink. And maybe there's a really pale pink as well. So maybe there are 3 pinks that we're looking at. Okay, there's this sort of aqua blue that makes some of the bigger flowers. And again, there seems to be a darker one and a lighter one. That seems to be also on the gnome's coat. I think that is just the darker colour, but maybe that's a 3rd colour as well. Okay. So we've got some pinks, some teals or aquas. We've got some yellows, okay, on the watering can, on the butterflies, some of the flowers. There's a darker one and a lighter one. Can't see a 3rd yellow, but, you know, there might be that I haven't spotted. And there are some greens, aren't there? The 2 different kinds of colours of leaves. There's the hat of the gnome. So we've got some greens. And then the only other thing I can see is the kind of charcoal black that's doing some outlining and also the words of Welcome Spring. Oh, wait, no, I think there must be another one, a sort of whitish colour for the gnome's beard. And I think that's also on the mushroomy sections as well. So I've got in my head, okay, what are the sort of colours we've got there? And that each of them seems to come in at least 2 shades, lighter and darker, plus the white, plus the grey. So let's have a look. And again, I'll put the picture on the screen for you to have a look at. Okay, so we've got some DMC colours. That's quite helpful, as well as Cosmo colours. You've got an idea. This is so helpful when they tell you how many stitches of each colour. So you can get a sense of, do I really need a full skein of this for something with 153 stitches? Probably not. You know, the biggest of these, okay, that is 3799. I think that's going to be our dark grey, and there's nearly 1,000 stitches of that. So I probably do want to make sure I've got pretty much a full skein of that, and then the others somewhere in between. And here we've got, really helpfully, with the symbols, an indication of which colour they refer to. And I think these come in their pairs. So we've got B5200 at the top, which is obviously the white. Then there's the N and the tick, and I think those are sort of lighter and darker yellows. The arrow and the 3 shapes, they're not really dots, but anyway, I think those are our lighter and darker pinks. Then we've got a lighter and darker aqua and our lighter and darker green. ending up with the grey. So we can see, actually, we were right. It's not 3 shades of pink. It seems to be only 2. But basically, we're looking at 4 colours, each of which we're looking for a pale and a dark. And then I'm looking for a whitish and a dark grey. There's some helpful notes here about the back stitch. We're going to do in two different colours, most of it in the dark grey, some of it in 581, which is the dark green. And the model was stitched on that particular cloth. I don't have Fabric Flair in Tiny Modernist Spring watercolours, so I don't know what that looks like or how it's going to work. So just looking back at my picture, I'm like, okay, I think I can see all of those pairs of colours, and I think, do you know what, it's going to be okay if I change some of those colours. I think it'll be okay, for example, if the teal, the aqua, was more bluish. I think that would work. I think it would be okay if the mushroom pinks were a bit more reddish. That would work. But interestingly, do you see the colours that she's chosen? If you watched last week's episode, you know we talked about the cyan, magenta, yellow triad of colours sometimes being more effective than a red, blue, yellow triad of colours. And that's actually what we've got here, isn't it? We've got a blue-green, we've got a sort of pinkish red, a pink sort of magenta colour, and then we've got some yellow with green in the background. And it gives a really pleasing effect. So I probably am going to want to try and stick with that as much as possible. Something pinkish, something sort of aqua cyan, something yellowish, and then green for my flowers. But I'm going to be okay if those aren't precisely the kind of shades that she's chosen. I want something that's going to give me the overall feel of the piece, which in this case is very spring, fresh tone. So before I've started looking at any individual floss colours, I've thought about how those colours are working together in the pairs, and that's a very common thing to look for. Are you looking for colours that are working very separately, or actually colours that often pair together? And here they obviously pair together, and so we're going to want to look for those light and dark pairings. And I know the sort of number of colours I'm looking for. I could add to that. I could say, do you know what? I do want to use 3 different shades of pink. And maybe I want the pink on the mushroom to be a little bit more reddish than pinkish. Okay, fine. So I might add that to my list of potential things to look about. I might want to change the colours on my gnome. I might want to say, do you know what? I want a gnome with a pink hat or an orange hat, or, you know, a green jacket or jumper or whatever it is they wear. I can't really remember. And that's fine. And I say, well, do I want those to be from the same set of colours I'm choosing from? I think I probably do. I think it would look quite strange if I suddenly had different colours just for him, or different colours just for the mushroom. So if I'm going to introduce new colours, which I absolutely could, I probably want to think about, well, where else could I use those? So, you know, I could change the inside colour of a flower, for example, to add in an extra colour. I could change the butterflies. At the moment, the butterflies are in the yellows. Well, we've got 3 flowers in those yellows. We've got 2 butterflies. So what if we had 2 butterflies and the gnome's jumper in a different colour? Maybe a lilac, for example, a dark and a pale lilac. That could work. One of the things you'll see that she's done here is that sort of rule of thirds. So there are 3 yellow flowers, 3 aqua flowers. Now, there are more pink flowers. There's what have we got? 1 biggish one, 3 medium-sized darker ones, a couple of medium-sized lighter ones. So it's almost as if she's done 3 of the lighter ones, 3 of the darker ones. Rule of thirds works really well for arranging things. It's slightly set off here by obviously 2 butterflies, the 2 mushrooms, 1 gnome. It doesn't have to be perfect. So now I know what I'm looking for. I'm going to keep my pattern there. I'm going to keep my fabric here. I'm not showing you because I don't want to show you what I've already stitched. But I'm just going to show you. Oh, now the sun has come out, so we're going to get a lot of shadows. Okay, you've seen a little sneak peek of what I've stitched. Okay, so there's my fabric. Let's put that there. Now, I've got my whole Classic Colourworks here thing, except the skeins I've already taken out that I'm using. So I'm going to do it as if I'm kitting it up again, and then we'll compare it with the ones that I'm actually stitching with. How about that? So already I'm seeing this. I'm going to start with my greens, it turns out, because that's what's really caught my eye. So I'm just going to go through my whole bundle and pick out ones that I think might work. Okay, that might work as one of our pale ones. Okay, I've got a nice, let's just make sure you've got this so you can see them. And I'm going to put them in groups. There we go, Frosted Star, that's quite a nice aqua maybe. Four Leaf Clover, that could work as the darker green. As you see, I've started in the middle. I don't think so. Okay, and at this point, you know, it's a first run. What have we got here? Finley Gold. Actually, that's one of my favourite Classic Colourworks yellows. That could work. Some of these, I've got an idea of whether they would be the darker or the lighter one, but I also, it depends what else I've got. Okay, I don't think we're going to use any of those. I don't think we need a bright orange embers. There's another possible for the really pale one. Oh, I've got a lovely pale pink here. What's that? Dolce de Leche. Okay, I might speed this up because this can take a little while. Maybe, might be a bit dark, might be a bit not quite in the tone that we're looking for. That's fine. And you see, one of the things I'm doing, apparently I'm keeping talking, so you are going to have to watch all of this, is thinking about choosing a whole set. I am not choosing an individual colour at this point and saying, yeah, definitely that. I'm choosing possibles, and I'm going to have to work out how do they go together. Okay, we've got some pretty pinks here. I don't think I want, no, that's too grey. Okay, Crab Cakes, Country Lane. I've got a colour here. Let me show you this one. Hopefully you can see. This is Classic Colourworks Cottage Garden. It's super pretty, but it's very variegated. And although I think the individual tones of the variegated colour would work, it's going to be too complicated to pick the right ones for this design. So I'm going to put that one back, even though my eye was drawn to it. I think that's going to be too blue. Yeah, I've really got some bluish greens there, so I want to stick with that. Now that's possible. It's not quite the pink I think that I really want. It's a little bit brownish, whereas I was looking for something fresher. Now that Cobble Peach is very nice, I think. No, I don't want clay. I use clay pot for a lot of things actually, but I don't think I want it for this. If you don't have your whole set of colours, and this is absolutely the reason why you might want a whole set of colours, the second best thing is to be able to go to a local needle workshop and do it there. And absolutely, your local needle workshop includes your Hobbycraft with a hopefully full range of DMC, and do it there. And don't be afraid, my Hobbycraft keeps its DMC, you know, 2/3 of the way at the back, a mile from any kind of natural light. But, you know, don't be afraid, pick out a whole load of skeins. I mean, be prepared to spend some time in there. Don't think you can just, you know, rush in and rush out unless you know the numbers you're getting. Be prepared to spend some time there. Pick out a selection like this, take it to the door and look at it in natural light. If you've already got some fabric that you're thinking of using, take that with you so you can see it against the fabric. Remember what we've talked about with respect to how colours can change when you stitch them because of being more intense or less intense, and you know that may impact the colours that you choose, but it may also just impact the way you then choose to stitch them, you know, which count of fabric you're going to use, or how many strands you're going to use. So you know, there's all of those sorts of decisions that you might want to bear in mind as you're doing this. Now I've finally got to one that I think, oh, it's a bit brown. I don't love it. It's the only one I've got to so far, so I'm going to keep it there. But it may be that the ideal colour is the one that I've already picked out. Bejeweled, I love Bejeweled, but it is not the right colour for this. But I'm going to put Bean Sprout in there. It's quite different from the greens I've already got, but I do love it. And it might be that we end up finding a match with Bean Sprout that works better than the sorts I've already picked. There's another white possible. You see, I looked at this and thought maybe it could work, but no, definitely not. And if you're doing this, if you are somebody with the privilege of a local needle workshop, don't let them rush you into this. You know, make sure you take your time trying different possibles, not choosing one at a time, but keeping options open until you get to your whole palette that you're happy with. Now, I wonder if that would go with Bean Sprout. It might. Let's just pop it there. Okay, I'm just going to keep going around because there's still some of these colours that I haven't really got options for, like the dark grey, and there's some that I think, oh, I think there might be something better. I always think there might be something better. Okay, I don't think it's going to be Sunshine Girl, but you never know. It might be Sunflower. Okay, I'm pretty sure it's not Steamed Broccoli. That's definitely too dark. No. And so I have got the chart in front of me, but I'm aware as I'm doing this that I'm not replicating it precisely. And so when I come to the next stage, I'm going to refer back to that and think, where are these pairs that I'm working on at the moment likely to end up? And is there anything I want to add into that? Now, I really love that, but I'm not sure I've got a good pair for it. We will see. We're getting there. Range, no, that's too grey. I don't really want greyish tones in this. Now, Queen Bee is another one that I do love. I don't know. Because I'm looking and I'm thinking, you know, the darker yellow really is quite different in her version of it, and the ones that I've got so far, I'm not sure I've got that much contrast. And do I think that's going to matter? And possibly not, but I want to give myself options if I can, in case I think, yeah, no, I really do need that. Oh, that's a lovely one. But I think that pink, you see how I can see already all the pinks I've got are in that sort of rose family. And this one, it's just not going to be the right pink for this. I'm sort of bearing in mind as well that I've got that mushroom. And while these might work for that, if there's anything that kind of goes a bit redder, I mean, maybe I do want to go back to the clay pot that I decided against and see if that might work for that part of the thing. I don't think I'm going to change. Oh, that's persimmon. You see, that might work. That's still in the same sort of family, but it's definitely a little bit darker, and it's also less variegated than some of them, and that might work quite well because on that mushroom, do you see, it's got white spots. And if you've got a very variegated background colour, your white spots are just going to look like part of that. So again, organza pink is going to be the wrong pink. That's too variegated. Okay, I think we're getting there. I'm just going to have a quick scan through what's left. I think we've got some really good options for quite a lot of this. Just going to see if I've got another dark greyish colour to consider for the lettering, but I don't know, and the back stitch. I don't know that I do. Oh, what's that? Cauldron. Let's get cauldron out. That's a bit different. It's a bit more of a bluish grey and not quite as dark, but it at least gives us something else to work with. So those are what I'm going to work with for now. I'm not ruling out going to have to find something else, which may or may not be in my classic Colourwork skein ring of floss. It may be from somewhere else. It might be a DMC, or I'm sure I've told you before, I have loads of anchor threads, so it might be one of those. So each one of these I'm now going to divide into its darks and its lights. Well, I'm going to put the white and the grey off to one side, because I think what I'm going to do is choose my pairs of the other colours and then come back and try these against that, because those are not in pairs, they're individual things. So I've got, let's do greens first. Now greens was interesting because I had a number of different kinds of green that will not all pair with each other. So pea pod I think might pair with amber waves as a light and a dark within a similar family. And there's also bean sprout. Now bean sprout is slightly less yellow than either of those, and I like it a bit better for this. I think bean sprout and amber wave against this fabric, I think that's definitely an option. I think I'm going to rule out the pea pod at this point. Okay, chopped chives. Could go either way, darker or lighter. Chopped chives with Desert Mesquite. Could do. It's a little, you know, it's much bluer green than the other pairing. And I'm not sure that's absolutely what I want for this. Four-leaf clover. I mean, that seems to me to go with frozen margarita, actually. I wonder if, yeah, no, I don't think that would quite go. Four-leaf clover and Desert Mesquite is also a possibility, I think. I think I like that better. The chopped chive's just a bit grayer, so I don't think I want that. So four-leaf clover, frozen margarita, I think it's possible. Desert Mesquite, four-leaf clover, I think it's possible, but I don't think the Desert Mesquite really gives the springish tone, so I'm going to get rid of that. And then I've got these two very pale ones. So the Creeping Jenny has got more of a yellowish tone, so you could have an amber waves and a Creeping Jenny. I just worry that that would be too yellow, given that we're already going to have a yellow pair on there. And I also think this very pale green, both the Dandelion Stem and the Creeping Jenny, there's a lot of the green leaves on this that don't have backstitch, and I just think they're going to fade into the background so much. So I'm going to get rid of those, and I'm going to say I've got these two options for my green, and I think it's going to depend what I end up with the other colours, which of those I go with. Okay, let's have a look at our aquas. These are some beautiful colours. We've got Caribbean Waters, Deep Fennel, Frosted Sage, Really Teal. I mean, the teal one really fits the tone of the piece, and I wonder if it would go well with Frosted Sage. I think Frosted Sage is going to be my best option for a paler one, no matter what. That's Caribbean Waters, that's Deep Fennel. I think those are a little bit too similar, so I'm going to get rid of that one. And then I think this is quite greenish, whereas this feels more aqua, but they don't quite go together as well. So that's where I'm going to leave my blues for the moment. So you can see I'm just sort of narrowing down rather than coming to final decisions at this point. I think this Queen Bee is a really good colour for the darker colour in there. Although Sunshine Girl might also be a good option for that. What else have we got that's in the yellows? I think that's all of them. Okay, and again, I've got some very pale ones. Now here, I'm looking at where those yellows are. And again, there's some that don't have backstitch around them. The two bigger yellow flowers with the sort of stripy sections, there's no backstitch around those. And I think, for example, Crushed Pineapple is just not going to show at all. So I'm going to get rid of that. Obviously, I mean, one way you could deal with this is you could backstitch those. I probably wouldn't backstitch them in the black, but I could backstitch them, for example, in the darker yellow that I choose. Now, I love Sunshine Girl, and like Sunshine Girl next to the really teal. I do really like that. What would that be next to? It could just about work with the Finley Gold. I think the Sunflower is too orangey for it, but the Finley Gold I think just about works. I think probably something like the Queen Bee and the Sunflower. I think this Baby Chick, I mean, it could just about work, but I think it's going to be a lot lighter than anything else I've picked, so I'm going to get rid of that. I wonder about Queen Bee together with Sunshine Girl. I don't hate it. I don't hate it. I don't know. I don't know. I think I'm going to have to say probably, well, I'm going to leave it in for now and see how it works with the rest of things. And I haven't quite, therefore, ruled any of the others out. Okay, and then pink. So you see how this, doing it sort of colour family by colour family. On this particular project, it's a really helpful way to do it because that's how the chart itself works. But even if you were doing a much more complicated thing, I would still do something similar, you know, and think, okay, where are all the reds or all the pinks, all the greens from this? And how are they relating to each other? And you might say, actually, on this particular chart, there's two different kinds of pinks. There's bluer pinks and redder pinks. Okay, so then I'm going to divide up the pinks that I pulled and see how they fit into that. And then you can also decide, actually, I'm not sure I really think it needs the bluer colours of this, or I'd like to push that a bit further and make the bluer pinks into lavenders, and see what you've got and how that's going to work. Right, so this persimmon, I really liked this, and I think I'm going to definitely stick with this as the darker red and then darker pink. And then I'm going to consider, do I want 2 or 3 pinks? I think one of the ones that she's used, it looks like it might be actually really quite variegated, sort of mid pink to very pale pink. So I'm wondering about, probably not the Colonial Rose that goes a bit browner, but Blushing Beauty. This has quite a variegation to it, so I might say just those two. I wonder how Rose Petal works. I don't hate that. Oh, suddenly the sun is doing all sorts of things. I don't hate that. And then maybe the Cobbled Peach, if I wanted a much paler one. Let's see if we can get that. There we go. I think that's lovely. I'm going to get rid of the 2 palest ones that I picked. For the same reasons that I have previously got rid of paler ones. So I think I'm going to get rid of the Blushing Beauty because although I think it's the right colours, it is just a bit more variegated than I really want. And I think I'm going to stick with those 3. And I think I've chosen that as a sort of final thing. I might decide as I come to stitch that I only want to use the first 2 of those, the Persimmon and the Rose Petal, but I've got the Cobbled Peach if I also want a paler one. I think that works really nicely. So then I'm going to look at them all together. Let's turn them this way around. Yeah, you can see the shadows are really doing bad thing. So if I look at the greens and the blues, I had basically 2 sets of greens in the aquas. Now they are quite greenish, so I think there is enough distinction between even those bluer greens and the bluer aquas that I've chosen. So that would be possible. I think though, if I was going to pick those colours, I think I want the really teal in there, because I think these two colours, the really teal and the frozen margarita, sort of have the same feel to them as colours. Let's just see what they look like with our yellow set. There is more contrast there, but I just feel like these don't quite sit as nicely together. I feel like that Amber Waves in particular is much more of a sort of brownish and a more variegated colour. So I think I'm going to pick the frozen margarita and the four-leaf clover, and I think I'm going to pick the really tealy and the frosted sage, and I think those are going to work nicely. And given that, I think I'm even more inclined, I think that just looks better to go with the Sunshine Girl, and then I think therefore I need to go with the Finley Gold as the paler yellow. And then I've got my 3 pinks, and I think I'm pretty happy with that. At this point, when you've got them together on the fabric and you're thinking, take a step back, am I happy with that as the overall look and feel of my project? It might not be the same as the chart you're looking at, and that's okay. Do I like it? I do like that. But if you didn't, you could say, okay, I think it's all gone a little bit too grey, a little bit too vibrant, a little bit too brownish. And so then you'd go back and you'd look and you'd say, okay, I've got the right sort of area, the wrong sort of area. I'm going to see what I've got that will just take it in a slightly different direction. So then let's have a look at what we've got. Let's have a look at our darker ones. We've got the Blackbird, that is quite brownish, and the Cauldron, which is quite purplish. And I think I would look at that and go, do you know what? I just don't really think either of those is what I want. Maybe the Cauldron. I just don't know that it's got enough of a contrast. I don't think it's dark enough in order to stand out as the lettering. So I'm not sure I'm happy with either of those. And then what about the white? Remembering that this is mainly our beard and moustache and a little bit on the mushrooms, but it's going to be backstitch, so it doesn't have to stand out from the fabric. Frosty, I think, I don't know if you can see this has got a little bit too much variegation in it. It's going to make his moustache look mouldy. I'm going to get rid of that. Bamboo, that's a nice bright white. I think that could work. I might even just lay it across like this. Antique Lace, I can't see a lot of difference between those two as they're shown up here. And then Eggshell, okay, that definitely looks too yellowy brownish on this. So I'm going to pick one of these. There's not a lot in it, but I think I'm going to go with Bamboo. And that's how I would kit that up. So we have a look and see what I actually chose and what you think of the difference. So I definitely had a better dark grey. So this is Baking Tin. It's actually not that much darker, but it's just a much truer grey. Okay, then I'm going to see if I can do these in the colour we've got. I did only pick 2 pinks, and I went for a slightly different kind of pink. Pink Posy and Orangina, which actually is quite variegated and does have orange in it as well as the pink. But I think that's going to look really fun in those flowers. So you can see already it's quite different, and you wouldn't want to pick your Orangina next to those, for example. The yellow, I picked Golden Star. I really like this. And Peach Sherbet. So these are a little bit oranger, particularly that Golden Star is much more orangey than the Sunshine that we had there. But I think it works fine. Then the blues, I have got Lettuce Leaf. I don't know why that is called Lettuce Leaf. If I saw a lettuce that colour, I really don't think I would eat it. And Mint Julep. So that's a slightly more muted pear. And I kind of wonder, Yeah, because that then against that looks very blue and very green, whereas together that works a bit better. I've got lemon lime. I've gone for a lot more variegated colours, you can see. In fact, lemon lime and Fancy Grancy Nancy. It's Fancy Green Nancy, but I always call it Fancy Grancy Nancy. So I think those greens are quite different, aren't they? They're much brighter. The whole thing, I think, is a little bit lighter and a little bit brighter, and certainly more variegated. And then I've gone for 12 grain for my white. I think either of those would stitch up really nicely. I would change to give that a different colour. I wonder what baking tin would look like over there. But that's the sort of process that I go through. Yeah, I think the baking tin would look better on that side as well. That is the sort of process that I would go through. It really helps, like I say, if you've got a whole range of colours. If you've got a DMC thread card, that really helps. If you can go and do it in a shop, that really helps. If you're choosing online, it's really, really hard. I can't remember what it was I was getting up that I was choosing yellows for, but I ended up ordering, you know, about 12 different yellow fancy flossers. I think I spent more on that than anything else in the project, but I just couldn't tell from the screen which one I wanted. And obviously, if you order one at a time, you pay shipping every time. So I've got a lot of yellows in different colours. Let me show you how it is stitching up with the ones that I've chosen. I've only started it a couple of days ago. I'm really loving it. I think it looks super cute. And I think my colours are working up the way that I wanted them to. I haven't used all of the colours yet, but not far off. I've used both pinks. Oh, maybe I have. No, not quite. Both pinks, both of the sort of aqua colours, both yellows, the white, the grey, but only the pale green. Good. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you if you've been watching the whole of this colour celebration series. If you've just stopped by to watch me go through kitting up a project like that, I hope that was helpful to you and that you'll feel more confident to start choosing your own colours, to start thinking about, do I need more colours or fewer colours? How would I work out what's in a project? Obviously, the bigger and more complicated your project is, the more difficult this is. I am not really suggesting you should start trying to kit your own heaven and earth design from scratch. I think that would be madness. But smaller designs and designs with much more discrete use of colour, so samplers, for example, are much more manageable than you would think to choose your own colours, either the whole colourway or substituting sections of it to improve it the way that you personally prefer. Anyway, I will be back next week with part 12 and the final finish and some fully finishing. Hope to see you then.